Hello, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. My name is Dayal, and this is From a Place of Self. I'm really excited and grateful for this opportunity to speak with one of my dear friends that I've known for quite a long time, actually. Maybe one of the longer people that the relationships I've had the longest in New York, even though our relationship has we didn't become close friends right away when we met, but we did know each other for a long time. And the people in my life that I've known for a long time when I first moved to New York are no longer here. So you're
Mm.
probably one of the longest standing people I know in New York, Parastou, who I've known for definitely over 10 years. I was still living as a monk when we met.
Wow, in
And
2011.
2011, yeah, which is nearing 20 years ago. Or no, that's 15 years ago. So it was a while ago.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad to have this conversation with you. So I'm going to shut up and just let people know that you're here and I'm excited. I appreciate you in a lot of ways, your authenticity, your
Oh,
vulnerability, your artistry, your expression. We've been in various trainings together of coaching and spiritual wisdom and retreats and services. And you're just a beautiful light in the world, effervescent in many ways and shining and filled with wisdom. And I just wanted to come in and give you an opportunity to share some of your story and let people hear from you. So
thank you, Dale. You're effervescent and such a bright light. I'm so glad that you are talking.
yeah. I hope
Please
effervescent was the right
stop
word.
me.
Sometimes I'll use a word and I'll say
Oh,
something and I'm not sure
I
if
love
is that the
your
right words.
bright
They're very
light.
verdant. They're very
You're brilliant and bright light. And keep talking, please, and sharing everything that you're sharing. Thank you for inviting me here. And yeah, I'm just, I'm super grateful, first of all, that yeah, I'm happy you invited me. I'm happy that you and Rasika are starting this IFS training and that I get to be in it this coming weekend. I'm super excited about that and really looking forward to it because of the coaching that we did together. I started to hear so much about IFS from different people, internal family systems, and I was like, what is that? And then I just started to think more about, like, right, that makes a lot of sense. The systems in our lives, the systems that we're building, the systems that we're a part of, and that, of course, there's family systems, and then there's what's internal to us. And yeah, so I'm just thrilled. And I want to thank you and just appreciate you and Rasika. And I'm grateful that I met you all those years ago at the Bhakti Center. You used to cook so nicely for everyone and take really good care of us. And you've taught me so much through your example. And I'm super moved by your presence and just who you are. So thank you.
thank you. And one of the reasons why I really wanted to have this conversation was I've always noticed that your sort of relentless but tenacity towards self-understanding and towards discovering truth and being real and being vulnerable and bringing your authentic self to life into the world. And I wanted to learn, I wanted to get to know you more and I wanted to get to know more of your story. And I wanted to bring that exploration of what it means to live from a place of authentic self,
Mhm.
because we all struggle with that to some degree or another. And the way in which we struggle with that is shared universally and at the same time is very unique and specific to each of our circumstances. And before you and I were having a conversation about an experience in your life. So the question that the main leading question for this podcast is always, what does it mean for you to live from a place of self? And
Mhm.
in that question, we can explore your life experiences where you thought you were living from a place of self or realize that you weren't living from a place of self or were disconnected from yourself, and how did you get out of that, and what was that journey coming out of that and coming more towards yourself like. And we were talking about a relationship that you were in
Mhm.
sort of casually, like, well, there was this example where I was engaged when I was in 2013, and then we were talking, I was like, Parasou, pause, we got to talk about that on the podcast, let's do it, hit record, boom. So I don't know if you want to start there or if there's something
Yes,
else that you wanted to
I
bring
do.
up, but
I'm
that could be
happy
a
to
great
start
starting
there.
point for
And I
us.
think I'll just zoom back a little bit before I get into that. So just from this idea of speaking from the authentic place of self, like, you know, I noticed a theme when I look back at my life, and back in, like, let's say 2011, 2012, um, I started to like really get excited about manifesting. And I'm not like saying I'm into that now, but back then I was really into manifesting. I was like, I'm going to manifest all these things. And I literally manifested this relationship that I had envisioned. It was like this life that I wanted, like just all these, like, it was very extravagant. It's kind of embarrassing to say, but I was really like over the top manifesting, like making all these vision boards, like I'm creating my life. And often they say like try to feel like there's a distinction between the externals that you're trying to create and the internal experience of what you want to manifest. And I think
Mm,
before maybe I thought manifesting was like, oh, I'll have this life and these homes or these, this lifestyle, and I'll be traveling here, and like this is what it's going to look like. And then over time and where I am now is like, wait, it's really about manifesting the internal experience.
mm,
And like, what is it that I'm feeling internally? Do I feel like I'm in alignment with myself? Like, how
yeah.
do I feel going about living my life? And that distinction is so important, and something that I couldn't have anticipated or realized unless I really went through this like tragic experience of like being in this place where I'd manifested these things and being
Yeah.
absolutely miserable
Mm.
at the same time.
Yeah. And I think that's a principle of life that is true for all of us. I say this all the time that we often don't want the things we think we want. We want the things we think we want will get us. And when we think about what I want for my life, we think about the things that we want to achieve, the things we want to have, but we don't often think about how do I want to feel, which is always what's driving the ambition that we have: a successful career, a meaningful relationship, a beautiful family, a beautiful body, a beautiful image, whatever it might be, a successful podcast, whatever it is that we're looking to achieve. It's being driven by this yearning for some inner experience. And when we're not aware of that, we just get lost in the pursuit of the thing itself. And all of a sudden, we're spending so much energy that we can't cut our losses because we're so invested now in getting this thing, even if it's so far divested from what we're actually trying to achieve internally. And we end up getting something. I've got the guy or the girl or the job or the money or the whatever, the followers, but then I'm missing that inner experience. And it's like, well, where did I go off track? And what I'm hearing from you was that you were into manifesting. It's like, I'm going to manifest this relationship, this life. And you came to this experience of recognizing, wait, what was I really trying to manifest? Was
Yeah.
it this external thing? And then there was that whole chasm between what I was looking for externally and internally what I was trying to get externally.
So there's something I want to say right there because I feel like we're like around this area, and I want to make sure we talk about it. And it's you know, there are moments in our life where we'll be in an experience, and at least for me in this particular case, so like I met someone, like within a month and a half we got engaged. I was like flying off the, clouds. I was so happy in the beginning, and I felt, there was like a lot of love bombing and a lot of like
Love bombing, like doting
love.
over each other and gifts and I loves you. So you met someone and then within 6 weeks you were engaged.
Yeah, and it was just like, okay, this is happening, and like we're getting married, and like it was just like, exciting. And it was like I was excited anyways. Um, and then I think something when I look back and I think about it, like there were things, that maybe I saw and ignored, or there were things that I saw and was like, well, maybe we can change that. Like not wanting to see reality, I think is part of not living the authentic life.
Yeah, seeing the red flags and thinking, well, maybe it's more like a shade of yellow,
Yeah,
and
that's
maybe it's not
not
a flag.
really.
Maybe it's just like a handkerchief.
Yeah.
This isn't a red flag. It's like a yellow handkerchief, and we can deal with yellow handkerchiefs. Like,
Or like, I guess, what is it? It's like in a lot of sacred texts, it's brought up that, you know, we fall into illusion if we really want something, we can't see things very clearly.
mm, our desire can blind us to reason sometimes.
Yes, that's exactly it. So the desire
Okay.
being so
What
strong
what
can
was
like
your
cloud.
desire?
So my desire was
Looking
like
back, if you can identify it,
perfect relationship,
perfect relationship.
right? And so I didn't want to see that it wasn't perfect, or that, oh, this
Yeah.
person wants me to be a different person in order to love me, or that actually I want them to be a little different than how they're being. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So like we were both, looking back, I feel like we were both emotionally immature. And I was just having this conversation recently with somebody, so I feel like it's fresh in terms of like, yeah, I'm not always looking back and thinking, what did I learn at that point? But as I go back and look at my life, it's actually nice to do this type of inventory, because it's like, wow, I learned something there. And it's like, oh, when I see
Yeah.
that, it's kind of like, even now, whether it's in work or in relationship or in any area, it's like, how am I trying to see things because my
Yeah.
desire is strong? And how can I make sure that I'm not letting my desire that's so strong get in the way, you know?
Yeah. Well, again, it's what is the real desire, right? I desire perfect relationship. Well, why do I desire that perfect relationship? Because I want a love, I want a connection, I want a belonging, and which is so funny because I get so fixated on the perfect relationship, I'm ignoring the fact that he doesn't even love me because he's trying to get me to be a different person. I don't even love him because I kind of want him to be a different person. But none of that matters because if we acknowledge that, then we lose the perfect relationship. So let's forget all of that and let's just co agree to just have this quote unquote perfect relationship, even if there's some really important things that we're ignoring.
Yeah, or it's like a fantasy on both ends, and it's like, is it even the same? It's not even a shared vision. It's kind of like a made up.
Mm,
And where's the grounding and like really hearing someone? And you know
yeah.
like something that happened with the coaching training that we did together with Upbuild, I actually feel deeply, Dayal, that that training expanded my capacity to understand my own emotional state
Yeah.
and to be able to share it with others. Like there were whole parts of me that I didn't know existed, that like I didn't even know how to vocalize. Maybe I knew them kind of, but I wasn't like able to really acknowledge and share them. And so the reason I'm sharing this is because so much of like this work is, really getting to know ourselves. And even though I've done like all these years of therapy, and like especially after the end of that particular relationship that I had mentioned, or I've done all this, like, different types of seminars and trainings, and nonviolent communication, etc. But like I feel like everything kind of, you can't go deeper than you can go, because you just like, something may open up at some moment in your life and you're like, okay, something clicked. All those other things are now clicking that didn't click
Yeah.
before.
Well, I think timing is really important. And I think that we do ourselves a big disservice when we think that things need to be on a specific timeline. The idea
Mhm.
that I'm late or I wish I learned this lesson earlier, which we always wish that we learned something earlier, that we were ahead of the game, et cetera. But there's also a sense of timing being essential that even if this came into my life earlier, I may not have seen it or recognized it or appreciated it as such. And I think that goes along with trust that I'm not walking this path alone, that there is a some higher power, some spiritual guide, something within me and beyond me that also is guiding me on this path and this journey. And that I'm not necessarily just wandering through, and the quicker I can get to something, the better. Like, it has to be authentic and real. And you said having to go through intense things sometimes in order to come to a realization of something rather than just a knowing of something. And it sounds like you really went through that. I'm curious, how long were you in this relationship in total before you realized you needed to get out, or before it ended?
I mean, there was, like, an end that happened within, like, 8 months, and then there
Mm-hmm.
was, like, kind of a rehashing, like, a couple years later where it was,
Yeah.
like, incomplete and there were some things to work out and just, like, resolve. So maybe, like, that took 3 years in total, just, like, the resolution part.
Yeah.
Um, but something you just said reminded me of, I think there's also this element of, like, free will versus fate, or even karma, if you wanna say, and, like, looking back at my life and seeing, like, where did I really have choice, and where was it, like, maybe karmic or somehow destined for me to have to go through something. That was
Yeah.
just something that, whether it's, this relationship, or even looking back at, like, childhood memories that were really difficult, or things that I had struggled through. I think there's a lot of, like, "Oh, there's trauma, it's intergenerational, there's, like, this thing that happened, it's my mom's fault," like, all those things, and then it's like, well, is it really, actually, it's been very empowering for me to realize that I came to this world as a soul that, like, has had other bodies in different lifetimes, and I'm carrying
Yeah.
karma, and that kind of is liberating, just to know that, oh, some
Yeah.
of the things that happened to me, I don't have to blame, like, people in my life for it, but there was some lesson that I needed to get from that, and that's where my
Yeah.
free will can come in, and I can really choose to learn the lesson.
Yeah. It's so much easier to just blame other people, isn't it? I mean, come on, just blame it on the parents. Can we please?
You've been there. "Mom, it's all your fault."
Yeah. There's this phrase I loved in ACWA and Al-Anon 12-step programs for emotional sobriety and recovery,
Yeah.
of blameless accountability,
Mm.
where our parents can do things to us, or neglect things in us and create wounds, or anybody can do this, not just parents, but other people that love us. And we have a hard time reconciling this. And this is why I love the work of internal family systems so much, is that it allows us space. It gives us a framework in which we can hold space for the contradictions within us. So it's very often that we explore our inner world and we go into wounds that exist, and we start to identify ways in which our parents may have hurt us, one parent or the other, or both, or another caretaker, or a lover, or a past partner. And we're carrying around this wound, and we, first of all, may never have recognized that it came from them. And it's a shocker and a revelation in and of itself. And then this other part floods in and says, well, they weren't that bad, and it wasn't that bad, and they tried their hardest. Like, we have to defend them at the same time. And it's just the multitude of parts in us, that there's the part that feels the wound and the pain and even
Mhm.
the anger, right? Do we allow ourselves to get angry with people because we feel like, well, if I get angry, then I'm a bad person, and we judge the anger? And but if I can separate all of that out, that no, there is a part of me that's really angry. And there is a part of me that's really, really hurt. And there's also a part of me that sees the best in what they did and doesn't want them to be condemned and written off as this horrible, terrible person. And but choice, you use this word choice that I loved so much, is that when our parts are not at choice because they're so blended, we're so blended with them, and we think that's who I am, like I'm my anger, or I'm my regret, or I'm whatever it might be, I'm my sadness, or my grief, or my terror, or my shame, or my whatever it might be. And we can create some space for them and interact with them and heal them. then we have a lot more choice because like that desire isn't blinding us anymore, or the blame isn't blinding us anymore. And so I'm curious for you, what was it like for you to be in this space where you were yearning for this perfect relationship, this manifestation, and
Mm-hmm.
then where did choice start to come in where you recognize, oh, this isn't working, or this isn't, these flags are bigger than what I thought they were going to be, or this isn't what I wanted, and what did that experience and journey look like for you?
Yeah, that's a really great question around the choice at that time. And I think I mean, I did go through an identity crisis
Mm,
because I had this vision of myself that, yeah, I think I had kind of also in my life thought like, okay, well, I don't have to live the conventional path, or I don't necessarily have to do things the way everyone else has done them. But there was also a very clear part of me that was like, oh, this is going to be my knight in shining armor. And then I'm going to have this kind of life. And then we're going to have like this kind of family. And it's just going to like, it just was very like, I just had to like step back. And it didn't mean that that wasn't possible or isn't possible. It just meant that with this person, this is not this is not going to work without me giving up
yeah,
myself, like the real me, right? Where it's like, don't read these books. Or if the person, the partner at the time was like, like, don't read these books in front of like these people, or don't talk about this in front of these people, or don't say this in front of these people. It was like, I started to see that, oh, I can't be myself. So it's like, either I have to be someone else, not living my authentic life,
yeah,
or or like have some external life that's all about what other people think.
yeah,
And then I'm like, I don't want to just live a life that's about what other people think. And there were actually people in my life that were like, you know what? Just deal with this. You're going to get through whatever anxiety or fear you're having. And like,
yeah,
like just, you're going to get through it, and like, just tolerate it. Like, but then I also had mentors and guides in my life who were like, no, if you have a lot of anxiety and like fear coming up in a relationship where you're supposed to feel the utmost safety, like this is
yeah,
a sign that you're getting that like this relationship isn't good for you. The fact that you're
yeah,
experiencing safety, that's like primary. To feel trust in a relationship is so
yeah,
essential, that if you're not experiencing that, then how can you like, that is like, that's a message from your authentic self to actually listen.
yeah. And that happens often where whether it's in the therapeutic world or the coaching sometimes world or even in spiritual circles, we don't listen, we don't always listen to the entirety of our inner world. And I think there's a difference between listening and being dictated by. And so we're so afraid of being dictated by my anger or my grief or making decisions from those places that we just think that we just have to get rid of it altogether and just, yeah, just tolerate your anxiety, just tolerate whatever it may be. But there's, those parts are feeling something for a reason and there's wisdom there. And I don't have to listen to them in the sense of do whatever they say, but it does warrant building, in IFS we call it a self to part relationship, like building a relationship with myself and that part of me that's feeling that anxiety. Richard Schwartz says this often, and I really appreciate it, that there may be grounding techniques we use. If you're feeling anxiety or getting an anxiety tech, the normal thought we have is how to make the anxiety go away, how to make the depression go away, how to make the sadness going away, as opposed to turning it and saying, oh, what is it? What is your experience that is being ignored that needs to be addressed so that we can actually heal and transform what's taking place here? And I'm hearing that in your story that there were these voices, there were these intuitions, there were these messages coming up internally that were trying to get your attention.
Yeah.
And yet the world and everybody, because it sounded like, and I don't know anything about this. I don't know anything about this relationship, although it sounds like you were in this after we met, because you said we met in like 2011 and this was like 2012, 2013.
This
So
is
it just goes
20.
to show how much we don't know what's going on in people's lives. Because I was just
Yeah.
Parastou in the Gita class and whatever
Yeah.
we were doing at the time. But it sounded like it was sort of a, correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't want to pry too personally, but somewhat of a high profile relationship. You were talking about living in the Plaza Hotel, or that there was some some grandeur-ness of this man
Yeah,
who came into
getting,
your life.
traveling in first class around the world and like,
Ooh, I
or
could
like
tolerate some anxiety to travel in first class. Yeah, for sure. Quiet down, everybody. Quiet down and just get another.
elaborate,
Yeah.
elaborate gifts and yeah, just a lot of things. Oh my God. There's something now I can't remember something you said that made me
Well, we were talking about listening to the voices that are going on inside that are trying to get our attention rather than just telling them to go away.
yeah,
And there with the world, there are certain people in your life who are saying, just tolerate the anxiety and just get through it and you'll be okay. But you weren't your authentic self, and there were parts of you that knew that
yeah.
wanted to get your
Yeah, or like
attention.
even I had this dream. I had a dream even, which is like
Yeah, parts get our attention in so many
and
ways.
I remember the
Dreams.
dream now, but I remember the my 5-year-old self coming and knocking on the door of the place where I was staying at the plaza and knocking. And then I opened the door and she was asking me for food, my 5-year-old self, like,
Mm,
feed me. And I slammed the door and I'm like, go away.
wow.
I know that's like a really vivid dream. Like it just came back up for me.
Yeah.
It was like there was a part of me where I felt like I had to abandon myself.
Yeah.
And there was a part of me that was like coming back that was like, please pay attention to me. I'm here. And I had to
Yeah.
like, it was almost like I had to shove her down and be like, no, no, I can't.
Yeah.
Um,
What
so
what do you think? Can I pry into that a little bit more, or do you want to move
yeah,
on? Like, I just
I
wanted to
mean,
share. I don't want to talk about it.
I ended up listening and like really doing a lot of work on integrating the 5-year-old, but
Yeah.
sure. Um,
I'm curious about the part of you that slammed the door
yeah,
and didn't want to. And I'm curious, what if you're in tune with that part now that wanted to slam the door? What was it afraid of if it let that 5-year-old in, that it felt like it needed
yeah.
to slam the door?
It was afraid that letting her in was going to ruin the relationship.
And what would happen if the relationship got ruined?
I would have lost my fantasy or the
Yeah.
like relationship vision that I um was hoping would change or something become the thing I wanted it.
Yeah. So it was also scared and just looking out for the best interest in some way.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I guess there was like some sense of like how can I have um
Yeah.
I didn't want to give up. I was like I was really determined, I was.
Yeah. So how did you integrate or open that door back up, and what did that look like? You're like,
Well,
do you really want me to share
like
like
a
20 years of
5-hour
therapy right here on the podcast?
conversation.
Is that what we're doing? Like,
That would be like a lot of conversation.
here.
There was
Welcome
so
to
much.
part 87 of From a Place of Self interview with Parastou.
No, no.
The 5-year-old is now 8.
Wait, repeat the question, please.
So well, first and foremost, I'm appreciating how we're getting messages all the time from our inner world. And I think that the connection that's there that we don't make is a big loss for us in terms of our physical body, in terms of our mental and emotional states, in terms of our thoughts and memories that pop up at times, in terms of our dreams. And parts within us can try to get our attention in a lot of different ways. And what may just seem like a backache or a sore throat, or like a neck tension or a habit, right? That seems disconnected, can actually be parts of us trying to get attention. My restlessness, my lack of proper sleep, my biting on my fingernail, like whatever it might be. And for you, it was showing up in this dream of like, this is how we're going to get to Paris too, is we're going to have this dream. And so I
Mhm.
think that itself, I think, is just such a valuable thing. I want to just reiterate, and I want to incorporate into my own life here, because I'm taking in this as well, of just being more attuned and listening to what my body and my subtle being and my inner world is trying to communicate to me that I'm looking away from. And what's the fear about going into that, because we may be like, that's stupid. And what are you talking about? Well, maybe the part of me that's saying that's stupid is actually just afraid of me addressing that because I might ruin the fantasy that I'm trying to get. And so I just wanted to capture that and throw it back out
Yeah.
there. And then the question is, how did you open the door back up? And you said done a lot of work to integrate that 5-year old into your life. And how
Mhm.
did you convince
Yeah.
or negotiate with the part that wanted to slam the door shut to open it back up? And did you have
Yeah.
another dream? Did it show up
No, I'm gonna
again?
tell you. So what happened, I think that dream was a big wake-up call for me, and there were some
Yeah.
other external events that happened that made me feel like, okay, you know, what's really important to me is my relationship with myself and not what other people think and what this like perfect external fantasy is, even if certain things are great externally, which would be nice to have.
Yeah.
Okay, this particular instance of the externals is not working. That doesn't mean it's not possible to have, great relationship or great whatever it is,
Yeah.
whatever. It was just like this instance, something about this is not working. So, just something I want to add was at that time in my life, Dayal, I was really reaching out, let's say my sister, or I'd go to like an acupuncturist, or I'd go to my mom. And there were people who would really support me, and I'd feel great after being with them. And I was like, yes, and my life would make sense. And then I'd go back, and then like it was almost like, like I just went backwards again. And it's like it
Yeah.
wasn't really sinking in deeply, and it wasn't, and like same with yoga classes. Like I started to do things like, I don't know, covering your whole body in sesame oil, which is now a practice that I do a
Yeah.
lot in the winter.
Yeah. Like, who would
Especially,
have thought that was actually a good idea?
yeah, it's like it calms your whole nervous system. It is the best thing ever, like most of your body
Just fill
anyway.
your tub with sesame oil. That sounds like an expensive
No,
habit.
just like
Just,
covering your
just
body and like
dunk
rubbing
in.
it in, like at least on your
Yeah,
arms,
Abhyanga.
stomach. Yeah, it's great. And then, like things like that. But I don't think I was even I don't think I had the capacity to nourish myself because I hadn't gone deep enough with myself in at the time. I was so consumed with a desire that was so strong that I couldn't
Yeah.
be myself. And it wasn't until I decided that it doesn't matter. Like I was literally shaking. Like my body was shaking and I was so like miserable. I was in tears like every day. I was such a wreck that I was like,
Yeah.
this is toxic. It doesn't matter. Um, there were good things that happened, but like there was also this polarity that was in the relationship where I experienced like extreme kindness, but also like,
Mm.
some things that were like very kind of like the relationship is over based on what was just said, like get out of my house, or like, things
Yeah.
like this that you can't unsay something like that. It's like, okay, well, are we engaged, or did you say get out of my house? Like which one?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't, like you can't, like unless you address that,
Yeah.
there's no
Yeah.
way out of it. And I had to accept that, like, all right, this is not healthy for me, so I'm going to like go back home and
Yeah.
like I'm just gonna have to start over for myself. And like part
Mm.
of that, like initially was like I need to take space from this person because I couldn't um yeah, I couldn't like maintain a relationship. I was too emotionally invested. It was like, whew, I think about how much emotional investment it's easy to put into people. And I've really put people on a pedestal when I look back in the patterns I've had in
Yeah.
relationships where it's like, oh my God, this person, and like really putting them up on a high pedestal. And then instead of really valuing my own worth and seeing my own worth and like being curious about like where am I and where are they and do we want the same things, instead of like this is the person that's it, it's got to work out.
Yeah. Well, you said something really powerful that I held on to, where as I was interpreting it, what comes back out is we can have the life we want. It may not just look the way we think it needs to look. And the life, bringing it back to what you shared at the beginning, that we want is really the internal experience that I want. And we get so, I remember Vipin said this in the training that we had with Upbuild, the coaching training, that normally the things that we want are actually just, they're just the strategies for getting what we want. And we get so hyper focused on the strategy, and then being able to let go of the strategy and recognize I still can actually have loving, fulfilling relationships if I let this go. And until the parts of me that are, believe and are insistent that it has to be this, until I'm able to connect with those parts and bring in my own self leadership and let them know that the pursuit of what you're looking for is noble, the way you're going about it, we can expand our purview of what's possible and how to get there.
Yeah, the strategies are different. Like, it doesn't have to be the
Yeah. So
strategy, like feeling loved and or like having, yeah. I
yeah.
mean, so
So
true.
I'm curious, how is that part of you that wanted to manifest this perfect relationship and slam the door and wanted to not lose the fantasy? How is that part of you doing now?
Mm, Need a minute to like feel into this.
Yeah. That part may even show up in your body somewhere, or a message or an image or memory or whatever. I'm just curious how it's doing.
I mean, there's a part of me that still wants, like a really wonderful relationship, right?
Of course.
And lots of wonderful relationships, obviously, with all the people in my life. Um, but I think what's different is how I relate to that. Like, I don't think there's no need to
Mm,
force things, and I don't have to abandon myself to have
mm,
some visual of a relationship out there or
yeah.
externally. Like, it's so much deeper because it's a personal experience, and it's about like the real me having a real experience with the real other person, not with their mask, not with my
Yeah.
mask, but like two real selves coming together. Like, that's a relationship.
Yeah.
But you're asking about that part of me. Like, I don't know if that was my real self, that part that slammed the door. That was like the part of me that wanted some idea of a perfect relationship.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing from you is that part of you, or there are parts of you that still want you to have meaningful, fulfilling relationships. But what I'm hearing is that there's more of an awareness of the context of the inner system. And we brought that up a little at the beginning, the idea of the systems that we create and build externally, and we also have an internal system internally. We say this in IFS often, that you never don't treat the symptom, treat the system, meaning
Mm,
that no part exists in isolation. So the part of me that wants to have a meaning, fulfilling relationship is connected to the part of me that feels empty inside, or feels incomplete, or feels unworthy in some way. And so you can't divorce those things from themselves. And what to speak of all the other parts that they may be connected to. And so what I'm hearing is that there's still that wanting of that, but there's a recognition of how to go about it in a way that's more effective and that is sensitive to and respectful of the other parts in your system, the other aspects of you that need to be kept in mind and honored and respected, so that we're all getting there together. And there's an awareness of being in relationship with your core sense of self. And that might be a good place for us to go to in the last bit of time that we have here, which is we've known each other in a spiritual context through studying sacred literatures and studying wisdom books and spiritual communities. And I'm curious what it's been like for you to come more into yourself, and what does that mean for you to be living more as yourself, or investing in getting to know your real self?
Mm, I love that. Yeah, it's an adventure and definitely a journey. I feel like it's totally an adventure. And spirituality, I think there was a lot of something about a lot of what I was learning was like really nice in theory, or I wanted a spirituality that um I just wanted to be really happy all the time, or I wanted to be, I don't know,
Mm,
peaceful. And
yeah.
there's certain things I wanted out of a spiritual practice that maybe wasn't necessarily seeing the real me. And I've also,
Mm,
so that's like one whole thing that we could talk about. But like I think over time it's also, and then there's like certain other things that just in hearing your question that came up, which are like dealing with again, what's expected versus what is my internal and true experience, like what's
yeah.
actually real for me. Recognizing that like the purpose of a lot of spiritual practice is to do it from a place of self, not from,
Yes.
oh, I should do this, so I'm going to do it. But like sometimes I have the should do it part that's like, then I remember there's like the real me.
Yeah. Which sometimes the should do it part comes right into our spiritual life. And for some people, the should do it part is telling them to make a bunch of money, have a successful career. And for some of us, the should do it part says that we need to say these prayers or chant these mantras or follow these principles or be this good person. But it's still, even the spiritual practices themselves can be coming from a should do part. And it's no more connected to self than somebody who quote unquote doesn't seem to be practicing spirituality at all. And so what I'm hearing from you is that even my spiritual practices, whatever they look like, there's a need to assess where I'm coming from even when I do them, and not just thinking, oh, spirituality is meaning being happy all the time or being peaceful all the time, but it's really grounding in that self and making sure that I'm not coming at it from some desperate or wounded place, but it actually is really authentic.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
there's so many ways. I'll just give one example, like
Yeah.
false renunciation. Um, like kind of a
False
sense,
renunciation.
yeah, one example that comes to mind is like the ways that I maybe have given up things in my life. Like, I don't need this or I don't want it. But like maybe I'm not being very honest with myself that I do
Mm,
want it. Or I'm like, I'm being like, oh, that's like I'm above that or I'm beyond this. But really, there's a part of me, like my humanity, my womanhood, my like whatever, just me being a person that like is walking in New York City and is a woman and lives here and has a family and whatever. I'm not only a soul, right? I mean, I'm a soul that's animating this body, because the body would not be alive if the soul was not animating the animating force. But it's kind of learning to reconcile, like, oh, I'm thirsty, I want a glass of water. Like all of these, the human things, being able to really own my human desires as well. And I'm still figuring that out. Because that's
yeah.
all true and real. And there's like, yeah, it's like the drinking water and eating a balanced diet and sleeping well and exercising actually supports the well-being of
Mm,
my deepest self, because this
yeah.
body is supporting
Yeah.
everything. So this, the reason I brought up false renunciation is like it's also important not to neglect ourselves um
Yeah.
poorly, or to think that I'm further along than I am.
Yeah. In 12 step rooms, I love what you're saying, the idea that we are the stewards of our own souls. And I think in IFS language, we're also the stewards of our own parts. that yes, we have an inherent sense of self, that's our spiritual being, but we also exist as a cross section of the sacred and the our divinity and our humanity are kind of all mixed together. And that's the journey of Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, of finding that line for himself and being able to recognize what does it mean to be situated in quote unquote transcendence, and at the same time have a duty to perform in the world, or have a psychophysical nature that needs to be expressed in a particular way. And I think that it's easy for us to go to an extreme of materialism where I'm just like this indulgent hedonistic pagan that's just like digging into life, or I'm just this zen, pieced out, effulgent, effervescent light on a hill that is above everything. But really, the reality is somewhere in the middle of being able to carry that divinity into my humanity and being able to honor my spiritual needs, and also what it means for me to recognize who I am. And you are that. You have so much, and that's why I love having this conversation with you, of so many beautiful gifts to give. I quote this often, even though I've never seen the movie and I've never heard the quote directly, but I've heard somebody else quote it, and I'm just taking the word for it that it's real. But in the movie
Okay.
Chariots of Fire,
Okay.
about the 1930s Olympics and running, there's a it's where that famous music comes from. Dun 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 dun
Okay.
dun dun dun
Got
dun
it.
dun 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 dun, and they're running in slow motion, you know? That's where that move that's where that comes from, that movie. And there's a man who says, I believe God made me for a purpose, but he also made me fast. And when I run, I feel God's pleasure.
Mm,
Meaning that, okay, God made me for some purpose, some big thing in life, but he also gave me speed because he was a runner, he's an Olympic runner. And I feel that to neglect that gift is a disservice to the way God made me in this life. And so for me to be able to find that, for Arjuna, right? Pick up your bow, you're a warrior, pick up your whatever it may be. But to be able to do that in a spiritual context is essential. And so as we wrap up today, I feel like again this is just the beginning of ongoing conversation. I'm so glad to get to know you, Paris. I'm so glad that we get to see the same city. I feel like we can
thank
just
you.
carry this on Thursday or Tuesday whenever we hang out, or when we do our IFS training. But what I'm curious about is just what is something that you want to offer today to yourself and to anyone listening about how to honor the parts of them, of us, that may be speaking up and trying to get our attention, and how to honor those parts, and also how to connect back to our core sense of self so that we can properly hold space for those parts that need our attention. It's a big question, but I'm throwing it all at you as we close up today, if you wanted to share anything about that.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Dayal. Something that's coming to mind of like how to connect is to have really great community, like, people like you, um, just good friends, people that you really trust, that really want the best for you. They wish you well and
Mm.
are your well wishers on the path. People who don't have some agenda, like if you're seeking advice from them, they really just want to see you thrive. That's super essential.
Mm.
Um, that is one thing that I would say is like so important in connecting to the self. And the other would be to have a practice or some practice where you're able to um, read or meditate, or just spend time going out in nature, going for a walk,
Yeah.
like really giving yourself the space. Like, you deserve to have space to just breathe. And if you feel like you don't have that space, like, I invite you to really zoom out and look at your life through the lens of like, not to be morbid, but
Mm.
like it's the end of your life. And then maybe you'll see your life from a different context, and all the things that seem really pressing can just
Yeah.
happen a little bit when you see
Yeah.
that you actually
Yeah.
have a lot of agency.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you for that. Last question just for you.
Okay.
Is there anything that you want to share with any of the parts within you right now that anyone needs to hear in you?
That I want to share with myself.
That you
That
as yourself want to share with any parts
Yeah.
inside of you?
Okay, so let me take a moment to like reconnect with all the parts you've been talking about.
It's like, okay, we're wrapping this up. You want to bring all that up again? Like we were just turning it off here, and you want me to wake up everybody? Come on, I got something to say. Gotta wake
Everyone's
everybody
up.
up. I gotta knock on the
Everyone's up.
doors.
Everyone's up. It's good. It's yeah, it's beautiful. I think I would just acknowledge and appreciate all of the parts and really be super grateful, and I hope that you're doing that for yourself as well, instead of like pushing away parts of yourself, like really
Yeah,
having the patience to be with your full self and all the even the pain or the sadness, and sometimes the pain is the gateway to experiencing something rich and deep within yourself. So
yeah.
thank you.
Parastou, you're amazing. Grateful for you and all of you that showed up today. Thank you all so much for listening and being with us. I feel like we can have many ongoing conversations, Parastou. So thank you for opening up a little bit of your heart. Thank you for opening a little bit of your experience. Thank you for all the parts of you that showed up and were present.
Thank you so
And I really
much. Thank
appreciate
you,
you and your
Rael.
journey. Thank
I
you.
so appreciate you. Thank you for doing this and for just being such a stand for transformation and growth in the world. So inspiring.
Stand for transformation. We're doing it. Please be well, everybody. Take care. Know that you're not alone. You are loved. Let somebody know that you love them. And I look forward to connecting with you again. Thank you for being here on From a Place of Self. Until then, bye bye.